All right, so everyone knows the name Jeffrey Dahmer, right?
Yeah.
And you probably know about the horrific crimes he committed.
Hmm.
But today, we're going way beyond those headlines.
Okay.
We're really going to try to understand what made this man tick.
Right.
We're using these 2 in-depth YouTube videos, interviews with Dahmer himself, investigators, people who knew him,
Interesting.
to get a much deeper picture.
It's a fascinating and deeply disturbing journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you see, in these interviews, Dahmer presents himself as this calm and articulate person, almost ordinary.
Right.
It creates this jarring contrast between his demeanor and his actions.
Oh, yeah.
That's really unsettling.
It's totally unsettling. And he doesn't come across as a monster at all.
Right.
But then he just casually talks about his desire to possess his victims permanently.
Yeah.
And he says the killings became almost addictive for him.
Wow.
He even mentions feeling this surge of energy during the murders.
And that right there, that's a glimpse into the incredibly complex psychology of a serial killer.
Yeah.
Dahmer's words really suggest this deep-seated need for control that likely stems from a profound sense of powerlessness.
I see.
In other aspects of his life.
Oh, okay.
It's like he was trying to create this twisted reality where he had ultimate power over life and death.
Wow. It's almost like he was trying to turn people into objects.
That's a really interesting observation. You know, things he could just completely control.
Yeah.
And that touches on a psychological theory called object relations.
Oh. Right.
And it suggests that early childhood experiences can have a huge impact on how we relate to others later in life.
Right.
In Dahmer's case, there's speculation that his difficult childhood, those feelings of isolation, might have contributed to this distorted view of relationships.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And his need to exert absolute control.
Right. And it seems like there were some disturbing signs.
Yeah.
Even in his childhood.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking fascination with animal bones, social isolation, experimenting on animals. He would dissect roadkill as a kid.
Wow.
And even slash open a fish just to see what was inside.
These actions, especially when you view them in hindsight, really suggest a concerning detachment from life and an unusual preoccupation with death and anatomy.
It's a stark reminder.
It is.
That sometimes the most disturbing behaviors can be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Or dismissed as just childhood curiosity.
Exactly.
But what if those early warning signs had been taken more seriously?
Right.
Could it have changed the course of events?
It's impossible to say, for sure.
Yeah.
But there were definitely missed opportunities for intervention. Yeah. Take, for example, the incident with the police officer who stopped Dahmer for a traffic violation.
Okay.
There were suspicious bags in his car, but the officer just didn't investigate further.
It's almost inconceivable.
I know.
That someone wouldn't at least ask what was in those bags.
It really underscores how crucial it is for law enforcement to be vigilant and take even seemingly minor incidents seriously.
Right.
Especially when potential red flags are present.
Absolutely. And sadly, as Dahmer got older, his crimes only escalated.
They did.
He went from drugging and killing his victims to dismemberment, necrophilia, and even cannibalism.
Wow.
The level of depravity is just staggering.
What's particularly chilling is how Dahmer describes his rituals.
Yeah.
He talks about watching The Exorcist 3 to get in the mood for murder.
Oh, my God.
And even keeping a victim's head in his locker at work.
What?
These details really reveal the chilling detachment from reality and the role that fantasy played in his crimes.
He even photographed his victims to remember their appearance.
Wow.
As he put it, and planned to build an altar with their skulls and skeletons.
It's like he was creating this macabre museum.
I was going to say it's like a museum.
Of his victims.
Yeah.
That behavior aligns with what we often see in serial killers.
Right.
This element of trophy taking.
Okay.
It's a way for them to maintain a connection to their crimes, to exert a sense of power over their victims, even after death.
But it wasn't just Dahmer's own twisted psyche at play here, was it?
No, absolutely not.
Societal failures and law enforcement missteps allowed him to continue this horrifying spree for years.
Yeah.
The police's repeated failure to thoroughly investigate his apartment, despite neighbors reporting a foul smell, suspicious activity.
Right.
It's a prime example
It is.
of how even with multiple warning signs, systemic failures and biases can have devastating consequences. Like that time neighbors called 911 about a naked, bleeding 14-year-old boy who had escaped from Dahmer's apartment. The police actually returned him to Dahmer.
Oh my gosh.
After Dahmer convinced him it was just a lover's quarrel.
That incident is particularly heartbreaking.
It is.
Because it illustrates the tragic consequences of failing to recognize and address potential danger.
Yeah.
Especially when it involves vulnerable individuals.
It's a stark reminder that we need greater awareness and accountability within law enforcement.
Absolutely.
To prevent such tragedies from happening again.
Yeah.
It also raises questions about how societal biases, particularly against marginalized communities, might have influenced the police's response.
Yeah.
Dahmer's victims were primarily young men of color, and their disappearances weren't always investigated as thoroughly as they should have been.
It's a sobering reminder.
It is.
That even in a society that prides itself on justice and equality, systemic biases can have a profound impact on the lives and deaths of individuals.
Absolutely.
One thing that's really striking about this case is the role that secrecy and isolation played in Dahmer's life. Yeah. You know, he was living this double life, hiding his true self from everyone.
It makes you wonder if that double life actually fueled his crimes. Like, the more he felt the need to hide, the more trapped he became, and the more extreme his behavior got.
That's a really insightful observation. It's possible that Dahmer's inability to reconcile his desires with societal norms, you know, combined with his fear of rejection and abandonment, created this perfect storm for his descent into darkness.
There were points where he almost seemed to be reaching out. Searching for a way out of that darkness. Like when he was in the army, he was eventually discharged for alcohol abuse. But what if someone had looked deeper? You know, recognized the underlying psychological issues.
It highlights how easily mental health issues can be overlooked or dismissed, especially in environments that prioritize conformity and discipline.
And sadly, when Dahmer returned to civilian life, he struggled to fit in, which only intensified his isolation and likely fueled his dark desires.
He even tried to find solace in religion.
Oh, really?
Attending church with his grandmother for a time.
It's almost like he was seeking some kind of redemption.
You
know, recognizing the darkness within himself.
That attempt, however fleeting, is fascinating from a psychological perspective. It suggests a part of him understood the depravity of his actions, even if he couldn't control them.
But sadly, those urges proved too strong.
They did.
He started frequenting gay bars.
Not
for connection, but to prey on his victims.
It's a chilling reminder that serial killers are often masters of deception. They blend in, appearing normal and charming, all the while harboring sinister intentions.
He'd lure them back to his apartment with promises of money for photos or just companionship. Then he'd drug them, often using sleeping pills mixed with alcohol.
That need to render his victims unconscious speaks volumes about his desire for control. He needed them powerless, unable to resist his desires.
And once they were unconscious, he'd act out his horrific fantasies. Strangulation was his preferred method of killing, but he also experimented with other forms of torture. Like drilling holes in their skulls and injecting acid into their brains.
That experimentation is a particularly disturbing element of his crimes.
It is.
It points to a morbid curiosity. A need to push the boundaries of cruelty and control. It's almost as if he was conducting his own twisted scientific experiments on his victims.
He even meticulously documented his crimes.
He did.
Taking photos of every step.
Wow.
It's as though he was trying to capture the essence of his victims. To possess them, even in death.
Those photos, as disturbing as they are, provide valuable insight into his psyche. They reveal a profound fascination with death, a desire to immortalize his acts, and a complete lack of empathy for his victims.
And it wasn't just the killings that were so horrific.
No.
He dismembered many of his victims,
Right.
keeping body parts in his refrigerator or preserving them with chemicals.
Yeah.
He even admitted to cannibalizing some of his victims.
The cannibalism is perhaps the most difficult aspect of his crimes to comprehend.
That is.
Some experts theorize that it was a way for him to feel a deeper connection to his victims,
Right.
to make them a permanent part of him in this twisted, macabre way.
It's a level of depravity that's almost impossible to fathom.
It forces us to confront the darkest potential that exists within the human psyche.
Yeah.
The capacity for evil that can lie dormant until triggered by a perfect storm of psychological and environmental factors.
And what's so disturbing is that all of this was happening right under the noses of his neighbors.
I know.
They complained about the smell,
Right?
the strange noises coming from his apartment.
Yeah.
But no one suspected the true horrors unfolding inside.
That's the chilling reality of serial killers.
Yeah.
They often operate undetected for years,
Right.
blending seamlessly into society and concealing their true nature behind this mask of normalcy.
And the police were finally called to Dahmer's apartment almost by accident.
Really?
One of his intended victims managed to escape,
Wow.
running down the street with a handcuff dangling from his wrist.
It was a moment of incredible bravery and sheer luck
Yeah.
that finally brought an end to Dahmer's reign of terror.
The police officers who entered that apartment were met with a scene of unimaginable horror.
I can imagine.
Body parts in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Skulls on the shelf.
Oh my God.
Photos of dismembered corpses.
It was like stepping into a nightmare.
It was.
The sheer scale of his crimes.
I know.
The meticulousness with which he planned and executed them.
Mm-hmm.
And the callous indifference he displayed towards his victims
Yeah.
sent shockwaves through the community and the nation.
It's hard to even grasp what those officers must have seen when they walked into that apartment.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes you think, about the ripple effects of a case like this.
Right.
Didn't the Dahmer case actually impact the field of criminal profiling in a big way?
Absolutely. Dahmer's crimes really brought this concept of the seemingly normal serial killer into the public consciousness.
For a while.
It challenged a lot of assumptions law enforcement had at the time.
Because before, Dahmer wasn't the image of a serial killer, more like a shadowy, obviously disturbed figure.
Exactly.
Not someone who could blend in so easily.
Right. His case really forced a shift in thinking.
Okay.
It led to a greater emphasis on understanding the psychology of these offenders, their motivations, and their behavioral patterns.
Makes sense. It wasn't just about catching a monster anymore. It was about recognizing that monsters could wear very ordinary masks.
Exactly.
And with all the missed opportunities in Dahmer's case,
Right.
from that traffic stop we talked about to the neighbors' complaints,
Yeah.
it must have also sparked a lot of discussion about prevention.
It was a major wake-up call.
Oh, yeah.
Not just for law enforcement, but for mental health professionals and society as a whole.
Okay.
It underlined the need for better communication between agencies,
Right.
more thorough risk assessments,
Yeah.
and a greater awareness of the subtle signs that someone might be on a dangerous path.
Right. We can't just rely on a stereotypical image anymore.
Absolutely not.
And it's heartbreaking to think about the victims' families.
Yeah.
To lose a loved one in such a horrific way.
Right.
And then to learn that their death might have been preventable.
The impact on those families was devastating.
It was.
On so many levels.
Yeah.
They had to cope with the unimaginable details of their loved ones' deaths, the intense media scrutiny, and the agonizing knowledge that the system failed them.
It's a stark reminder.
It is.
That behind all the headlines and the morbid fascination, there are real people whose lives were shattered by Dahmer's actions.
Yeah.
Their stories are important too.
Their stories are a testament to the enduring power of trauma and the long and difficult journey of healing.
Right.
And they remind us that these cases are about much more than just the perpetrator.
And Dahmer himself,
Yeah.
even though he expressed remorse later on,
Right.
even turned to religion in prison, there's still that lingering question. Did he truly understand the gravity of what he did?
Right.
The pain he caused?
That's a question we can never definitively answer.
Right.
Some experts believe his expressions of remorse were genuine,
Okay.
while others argue they were a way to cope with his guilt or even manipulate public perception,
I see.
the human mind,
Yeah.
especially in cases of extreme psychopathology, is incredibly complex. It's difficult to know for sure what was going on in his heart.
It's almost as if the more we learn about this case, the more questions it raises.
Absolutely.
It forces us to confront some really uncomfortable truths
It does.
about human nature.
I think that's why Dahmer's story continues to fascinate and horrify us.
Yeah?
You know, he represents this unsettling blend of normalcy and depravity
Right.
that challenges our assumptions about good and evil.
He's a figure who will forever be associated with darkness,
Mm-hmm.
but I think his story also serves as a powerful cautionary tale.
I agree. It reminds us of the importance of vigilance,
Yeah.
empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding.
Right.
Because, as we've seen with Dahmer,
Yeah.
the consequences of ignoring the warning signs can be truly devastating.
This deep dive into Jeffrey Dahmer's case has been dark and disturbing,
Yeah,
but hopefully it's also been insightful.
I think so.
It's a reminder to all of us to be more aware,
Yeah.
more compassionate,
Mm-hmm.
and more determined to prevent such horrors from happening again.
Right.
Because darkness can lurk in unexpected places.
It can.
And sometimes the most important thing is simply to keep those lights on.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious, but stay safe.